Hello and welcome to TeleSUR English, tonight in a special show in which we are going to closely follow the latest in the country's election day as Mexico elects new authorities for the coming 6 years. My name is Belén de los Santos and this is Mexico Decides.
During the opening session, the Mexican National Electoral Institute called on the population to exercise their right to vote and assured that participation is essential to strengthen democratic institutions.
Our country has come a long way since those first steps towards democracy from the first elections in 1824 to this one. We have worked tirelessly to build a solid and reliable electoral system. The National Electoral Institute has been and will continue to be a guarantee of transparency, fairness, and legality in every electoral process. I call on all citizens to go out and vote with pride and with the certainty that every vote counts. Everyone's participation is vital to strengthen our democracy and ensure that our voices are heard.
Es vital para fortalecer nuestra democracia y asegurar que nuestras voces sean escuchadas.
As part of the electoral activity, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, attended the Old Palace of the Archbishopric located in the historic center of Mexico City, where he exercised his right to vote, accompanied by his wife. In the same way, the presidential candidate of Let's Keep Making History, Claudia Sheinbaum, went to the ballot box in Duraznos, in Tlapan, where she cast her vote.
I just want to tell you that for the presidency, I voted for Ifigenia Martinez, and the rest, you already know how we vote. Long live democracy.
On this day, the candidate of the alliance, Fuerza y Corazón, Social Galvez, celebrated the large turnout of citizens while casting her vote in the Miguel Hidalgo mayor's office in Mexico City.
I welcome this democratic participation. It is what I want the most, to strengthen the INE so that it continues to be an autonomous body that organizes elections in a democratic manner, that the citizens count the votes as they are doing now.
Presidential candidate for the Citizens Movement Party, Jorge Álvarez Maínez, went this Sunday to a polling station located in Colonia Roma in Mexico City, where he as well exercised his right to vote and urged citizens to respect the electoral rules.
We are going to respect the electoral rules. The polls in Mexico close at 6 o'clock, and several cities in the country have 2-hour delay. So we are not going to make a statement before 8 o'clock at night, because that is the time when the polls close. And we must respect the people's voting process.
In a first report, the Mexican National Electoral Institute emphasized that the elections are taking place without incidents and peacefully throughout the country.
Mexicans headed to the polls since early Sunday to decide the nation's future for the upcoming 6 years. The polls have already closed at 6 p.m. local time and voting is now underway. The executive of the Electoral Institute pointed out that as of midday, more than 149,000 polling places had been installed throughout the country, which represented 99.98%, while 99.50% of the installed booths have presented a first report already. Tadej Zavala emphasized that these numbers exceeded those reported in the year 2018 and 2021 elections. There is great expectations in the national territory and abroad regarding the outcome of an election of great regional impact. Let's recall that in this context, 98.3 Mexicans were summoned to vote. 20,780 official positions are at stake in these elections. Mexicans elect a new president and for the upcoming 6 years, and the city of Mexico and 8 other states are also electing regional authorities in these elections. Also, Mexicans are voting to renew 128 senators and 500 deputies that will be elected. Let us also keep in mind that according to Mexico's electoral law, the winner is the one who obtains the highest number of votes, disregarding the differences between them or the total amount, as there is no runoff in these elections. And as we closely follow any updates, we welcome our first guests this evening to help us analyze the significance of today's elections, the path that brought the country to this point, and also what we can expect for the future. In this case, we are joined by Nerida Vargas, who is a Mexican migrant leader in the United States. Hello, Nerida, can you hear us? Welcome to Mexico Decides.
Hi, thank you for having me in your program.
It's a pleasure. So tell us, how have you lived this election day?
It's very historical for us. It's the first time in the United States that Mexican election is being placed, and the 23 Mexican consulates in the whole world. 9 of those consulates are in California, which is where we live. In California, we have a Mexican consulates. There have been a lot of the people that they come to fight for their rights to vote, and we are very pleased to have a lot of Mexicans that they decide in the future that we're gonna have first time in history election a woman as a president of Mexico.
That is clear, and of course this is an election that will have a huge impact in the region. So I wanted to break down a little bit what are the options for international audience, what are the options that are at stake here in the Mexican election. So let's begin by watching a little material from Claudia Sheinbaum, and then you'll tell us your opinion on this candidate. Let's go with Claudia Sheinbaum.
She's a doctor, and she's very pleasure. She was here in Los Angeles, California, last year in October 2023. I was there and to listen to her information that what she's planning to do for all the Mexicans. Even though that we are in the United States, we're still Mexicans. For migrants, we are Mexicans, and we need to have a government that listen to us too. And she's one of the very important leaders that we have since 1990s in Mexico. So she's been really good to listen to all the information that in the needs that we have for all the families community that we have in this 52 Mexican consulates that we always need for all our process, the documentation that we, as a Mexican, we need to pursue in the United States.
And Nerida, these elections have been widely regarded as an election really on the continuity of the project, the political project of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. And that is what's at stake with that and the opposition. What is your view on this idea of watching these elections as really a quest of the continuity of this project?
That's true. That's the continuation. Dr. Sheinbaum is the continuation of the government that we need for Mexico, because we need to make a stop down all the corruption they've been doing. So for anyway is election and democracy, we need to have a democracy, even though whoever it is, when continuation, when Dr. Sheinbaum, she will also continue his work. So the voice is in the Mexicans. Whoever we decide, if we decide to continue his work, President Obrador, or we want to have a change and learning for what we have in these 6 years and change it for a good, or what we decide to do in continuation.
Now, Nerida, these elections are also particular in terms of the opposition. Really, both traditional parties from Mexico have gathered together to face the ruling Morena and the coalition that in which it takes part. So what is your take? How would you explain to an international audience, how can we understand the opposition, the Mexican opposition in these elections?
The Engineer Xochitl, she is very social activist at the beginning of his political life. She was very good in for the Mexican Native Indians, and she was a strategy for also changing and nutritional for kids. She has a lot of programs too. So the work that she has to do is to change and learn for all the mistakes that the previous government they did. And like I'm saying, for us, being in outside of Mexico doesn't take in us any rights. So we need to have the right to decide, because we're still continuing on providing with all the money that we send to Mexico. We the power of the border community, border economics. We provide to the Mexican economic during the COVID-19 a lot of help. Of course, we are really a lot of economic help in the U.S. because we are the workers that we've been providing economic and moving in the United States too. So Xochitl is very she is a business owner, so she knows that she needs to provide employment to also to the Mexican people, so they stay in Mexico and they don't have to immigrate to the United States.
And now we have a third option in these elections, even though polls are saying that it would be the third runner-up to the presidency. Also, Jorge Alvarez Maínez is competing. How would you describe his position, his candidacy in this election?
I'm being lucky because I meet all three. As a leader migrant, as a leader Mexican in the United States, I had the opportunity to meet with all three in different ways and meetings that we have here. We listen to them. So mine is really younger, very younger, enthusiastic candidate. He has a lot of potential with the younger people, even with the kids. A lot of the kids know his publicity that he has when he's a song for being in a president election is all the kids in Mexico, they know the song, and also a lot of other people in other countries, and they know their song. They're really popular song that being played in place for his candidacy. And he is really younger. He has a lot of potential. He's very smart, and probably in the future he has a lot of things to do for Mexico. I think right here he came a little bit late in the election, but he is a really smart guy. I know him, and he's gonna do a lot of potential in the future, even though if he's not as a president, probably because he has not much popularity in his party, but probably in the future he will. I'm pretty sure.
Now, Merida, as a Mexican migrant leader in the United States, of course, the relationship between Mexico and the United States is also always a very relevant topic to understand Mexico and its role in the region. What can we expect in the terms of the different political positions that these options have in terms of how they would affect the relationship with the United States and the migration issue?
Yes, that's true. We have to have the opportunity to choose really well who wants to represent our Mexico, because that also affects our relationship for all them families and Mexican migrants that we have here in the United States. And of course, we have election also in November 5th in the United States. So it's very, very important the person who win in Mexico today. We probably know in 3 hours or 4 hours the pre-results, but it's important for the relationship and also for all the 11 million undocumented Mexican immigrants that we have here in the United States. It's important for us to have a leader for Mexico to really fight for us and also represent us and defend us when we need it.
Excellent. Thank you, Nerida, for your input in this important date for Mexico and, of course, for the region. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time, and Viva Mexico.
Exactly. So that was Nerida Vargas, Mexican migrant leader in the United States. And we continue in this special edition of TeleSUR English, Mexico Decides 2024. And as today, Mexicans went to the polls to elect a new president for the upcoming 6 years. And now we are going to continue breaking down the three options that really are at stake in this election. are as voting is underway in Mexico, and we should have results in the coming hours. So let's go to see a little bit more about presidential candidate Claudia Sheinbaum.
Claudia Sheinbaum was the first woman elected head of Mexico City government in 2018. Among her most relevant proposals, she speaks for fair salaries for the education sector. The presidential candidate also aims to strengthen the National Guard. Sheinbaum is set to continue the fourth transformation of the Republic.
And now let's see a little bit more about opposition candidate running for a coalition that really brings together two of the most important traditional parties in Mexico, and that is Xochitl Gálvez.
Xochitl Gálvez is the candidate of the right-wing coalition that unites almost all the opposition. Strength and Heart for Mexico is called. She was the candidate for governor of the state of Hidalgo and directed the National Commission for Indigenous People. Gálvez highlighted levels of parity during the debates.
And also, let's go through the third option. Jorge Álvarez Maínez for the Citizen Movement Party is also participating in these elections.
Jorge Álvarez Maínez presents himself as an alternative to the other two coalitions, with a progressive liberal agenda. In his campaign, he spoke about the demilitarization of public security, the autonomy of the judiciary, and an educational revolution. While his intention of vote is much lower than the other candidates, he appeals to the younger vote as an option to traditional parties.
Now let's take a short break, but we'll be right back with more Mexico Decides 2024. Welcome back to Mexico Decides 2024. In this context of the general election in Mexico, our collaborator Luis Gutierrez gives us an update on how this process is being carried out in Los Angeles. Let's listen.
In this country to come to cast their vote in this historic election, the largest in the history of Mexico, the first with three female candidates, one of whom will most likely be the next president, and furthermore, this election is the first in which the Mexican community abroad has been able to go to the polls in person. Previously, voting from abroad was only possible electronically or by post. More than 200,000 people have registered to vote from outside Mexico. At this Mexican consulate in Los Angeles, 1,600 people have registered to vote. In addition, this consulate has the capacity for 1,500 people to vote without prior registration. This is why the lines outside this consulate started to form since last night. Some of the people I was able to talk to in these lines have been here since 3 in the morning, and to try to vote at this consulate that opened at 7 in the morning Los Angeles time. Unfortunately, for some of these unregistered voters, the system used by the electronic polling stations installed by the National Electoral Institute, the INE, automatically closes the voting process at 5 p.m. As I say, this consulate had the capacity to process the votes of 1,600 registered voters and 1,500 unregistered voters. However, it is estimated that almost 4,000 people gathered outside the consulate, and a large number of them had to return home without being able to participate in this historic election. In the moments that followed the closing of the polls, we were able to observe great discontent among voters who still remain outside this consulate. However, this feeling was quickly replaced by songs in support of Claudia Sheinbaum, the Morena candidate. It's worth mentioning that the Mexican community in Los Angeles largely sympathizes with the political project initiated by the President López Obrador, a project that Claudia Sheinbaum will continue if she's elected as the next and first female president of Mexico. I am Luis Gutierrez for TeleSUR from Los Angeles, California.
And this June 2nd to elect most likely the first woman president. So let's see a report on this crucial topic.
In Mexico, women obtained the right to vote and be elected in 1953. After 71 years, everything seems to indicate that the country will have its first female head of state. Most of the citizens consider the election of a woman as a positive change in public affairs and sends a message of gender equality.
I think that the most important thing is to break this presidential system and the fact that the power is only in the hands of the male gender.
I like to see women in roles of real power. It's something cool that should happen more often.
The certainty that when a woman is determined to do something, she can do it. I have a daughter, so it would be an excellent motivation for her to see that it can be done. We do not downgrade them just because they are women.
Specialist affirms that the presidency of a woman in Mexico represents a turning point into 100 years of patriarchal politics.
But the struggle does not end there. Now we continue this fight for full equality so that women who come to power can have that power and exercise it themselves, be autonomous, and continue with this feminist struggle to encourage more women for positions of power.
If the polls come true, the first president of Mexico would also be, for the moment, the third head of state in Latin America and the 14th to have governed a country in the region. Details and specialist.
Mexico joins the forefront policy in democracy. I believe that female leadership in the region is important. In the case of the candidate of the Morena coalition, there will be many continuities and alliances with the leftist governments.
The rise of women to positions of power could be better. However, political violence against them continues. During the current electoral process in Mexico, 12 women candidates for different positions were assassinated.
We see the synergies of the gender order of patriarchy, that what they do is try to remind women, whoever they are, that their place is not in politics.
Political analysts agree that the election of the first female president of the Mexican government must transcend to become a landmark in the progress made in terms of gender equity in regional politics. The fact that a woman could be elected to lead the destiny of Mexico is undoubtedly a historic event that will close the gender gap in the representation of women in high-level positions of popular election.
TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
We continue now in Mexico decides as vote counting is underway, and we now receive our second guest this evening to continue our analysis of the situation. We are joined by Gustavo López Montiel, political analyst and professor at the School of Social Sciences and Government from the Technological of Monterrey. Welcome, Gustavo. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Tell us, what are your impressions at this point of the evening? What can we expect?
Well, there are several candidates that already leave to say that they won, particularly in those elections that happen in the states. We have 9 states that are electing governors, and most of them have already said that they won. This is a strategy that they use in order for their supporters to have an expectation about the winning. However, the election just ended in the country at 7 o'clock because of the differences of time between the different states. And we had a very participatory election. Many people went to vote, and I think that's the most important issue. Many people are expecting that more than 70% of the voters went to vote. So this is very important, and now we're waiting to see the first results in the official channels that we have from the electoral authorities.
Gustavo, effectively, you were talking about the levels of participation, and if it is around the 70%, this would be an important number, a historical high, if we measure the average participation from the century that was around 61% for other elections. So, of course, this speaks to the process that has been going on in the last 6 years with Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and this elections tonight being a question of the continuity of that process. Can we read the election tonight in that sense? How can you read the support of Claudia Sheinbaum and also the way the opposition has behaved?
Yes, one of the important things in this about these levels of participation is that many people say that when many people go to vote is because they are voting against the government. In this case, I think that many people obviously went to vote because they don't agree with President López Obrador. However, I think that also there is a very large structure, electoral structure, that President López Obrador has built during the last years, and I think that many people that received many of these social programs went to vote too. So so this is a very important element, because whether they are opposition or whether they are supporters of the government, I think that having 70% of participation, it's very relevant for the strengthening of the democratic processes in Mexico. And regardless who wins the election, we will have a very strong government, I think, because they will have a relevant support from voters in this election.
And in the same sense of what you were just saying, actually, Mexico appears to be one of the few political projects in the world that has gone through the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the ruling party continues to have a high popularity. We're talking about around 60% of high popularity for Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the president, who cannot re-elect because of a Mexican electoral law, but has still a lot of support. What do you think are the keys to understand that support, even going through such a huge crisis that took down many governments in the world?
Yes, and there are reports that say that many of the deaths that Mexico had were avoidable. So regardless that President López Obrador has a very important support. More than 65% of the people supports him. However, it's very hard to bring that support to electoral support, because we have had some presidents, former presidents, for instance, Ernesto Zedillo, who got more or less 70% of popularity when he left government. However, his political party lost the election in that year. So I think that President López Obrador has been able to capitalize that support and bring that support into votes. So this is very, very relevant, because I think that the key element is that President López Obrador every day at 7 o'clock in the morning lives and speaks to people. And many people, and he sets the agenda. He sets the agenda for media, for politicians, and also for people. During the day, people are talking about what the president said in the morning. So this is very relevant. And secondly, because he speaks in very simple terms. And most of politicians speak in very difficult terms. So I think that this is very important, because he connects with people and people understand him. So this is very important, because he's a master of communication. So we have now to see in this evaluation of people are making of his government, if that evaluation is positive for the president to win this election with his political party.
One of the key aspects that, of course, everyone is highlighting in this election also, Gustavo, is the fact that the two main candidates are women, and this would mean if one of them were elected that Mexico would have its first women president, and also North America would have its first women president. So what does this mean for the country and the region?
Well, this is very important. We have had formerly female candidates. However, in this election, we have two female candidates that that may be able to win. One of them, obviously, is going to win, and but this is very important because they are breaking this crystal ceiling that many people speaks about, in which women cannot, in Mexico particularly, cannot go beyond some positions. As we have, for instance, we have now Congress, which almost has 50% women and 50% men. And we have, for instance, the president of the electoral authorities, of both electoral authorities are women. And in many positions, for instance, the president of the judicial power and the legislative power are also female. So if we have we are going to have a female president, and this is very important because that will bolster female participation not only in politics but also in private enterprises and in society as such. We are seeing also a growing amount of female deaths, feminicidios, we call them in Mexico, because of this empowerment of women that creates obviously a conflict that ends in their deaths. However, we have as society and governments to build a policy that goes with women and accompanies them in the process of empowerment.
Of course, and this has, of course, to do with the fact that more legislation, right, is needed and is focused on targeting this specific deaths and violence targeting women. So you were mentioning, Gustavo, before that, of course, besides the presidential election, also 9 districts, including the city of Mexico, are choosing their authorities. Let's get a little bit deeper into the dispute that has been going on in the city of Mexico, one of the most important districts for Mexico. What can you tell us about what's going on there and what could we expect as the results come along?
Well, we have 9 states that have elections for governor. Mexico City and, for instance, Veracruz and Jalisco have the largest electoral lists. So for that reason, they are very important. We have also Puebla, which maybe Morena is going to win, and also other states like Chiapas and Yucatan and Guanajuato. Yucatan and Guanajuato have always been pan states, opposition states. However, Mexico City is one of the most important places. Mexico City has 7 million voters. So if Morena wins, the winning of the presidency will be easier. However, if the opposition wins Mexico City, that will represent a difficulty for Morena winning the presidential election because the votes that Mexico City has are very important votes, and also because Mexico City is a state in which Morena and formerly the PRD have governed during the last 24 years. So if they lose Mexico City, that would be a very important impact for Morena. And also for Veracruz. Veracruz is the 4th electorate in Mexico. So Veracruz is very important because it's a large region, and the support of Veracruz in financial terms and also in votes, it's relevant because Veracruz has more or less 4 million voters, so it's also a very important state. And also Jalisco. Jalisco is a state governed by Movimiento Ciudadano, Citizens Movement, which is an opposition party. However, in this election, the Morena candidate was very close of this MC candidates. And we have other states, Guanajuato and Yucatan, who have been always pan states. And also we have Chiapas, which is is the poorest state in Mexico, one of the poorest, and also has had many problems of violence during the last years. So Chiapas is a Morena state, I think they are going to win there. However, these states are very important because if Morena loses some of these states, the political balance is going to represent difficulties for Morena during the next years.
This is clear, and of course it helps us better understand the results that are about to come in. Well, in the next few hours we'll have, and definitely tomorrow, official results to analyze any of these possibilities that you were mentioning. And I wanted to ask you if, as many polls are, most of the polls are giving, if Morena effectively wins the presidency, this would mean the solidification, the consolidation of the progressive project that is Morena's and that has been carried out by Andrés Manuel López Obrador. As you were saying, he became a very important leader in the country, but also in the region. What do you think would be the impact of this in a regional perspective? How could this impact Latin America, the Caribbean, the relationship with the United States?
Yes, if Claudia Sheinbaum wins the election, she also has to win the Congress, because the Congress is very relevant for their policies to be carried out. If she loses the Congress, or if she gets a limited majority in Congress, that will make very difficult for her to negotiate her reforms, because some of the agenda has been set by President López Obrador formally, and then she will have to negotiate with opposition parties in order to carry out that agenda. In regional terms, yes, President López Obrador has been very important for some countries, for some regions. Central America, for instance, he has been applying a policy in which he is giving money to some Central American states in order to stop, to create conditions, labor conditions in those countries, in order to stop the flows of immigration that come from Central America into Mexico to go to the States. And then if Claudia Sheinbaum wins, she has said that she will continue supporting these Central American countries. They have been also very relevant for some countries, like left government countries, for instance, like in those times Peru or Ecuador. Now we have broken relations with some of those countries because governments have changed. However, that set a very important precedent for Mexican governments, whether they be left or right. And also with the United States, I think that the process is very complicated because in that country they have also having elections, presidential elections, and whether they win Trump or Biden, they represent a very hard position for immigration policies regarding Mexico. And then I think that Claudia Sheinbaum, if she wins the election, she will have to behave very strong regarding those presidents, the president of the United States, whether it be Trump or Biden, because Mexico has acted in the last years as a third country for some immigrants, in fact, not legally, but also Mexico has stopped some of the flows on immigration by using the National Guard. So I think that we have to go on different policies in agreement with the United States, and I think that it will be very difficult because both candidates, Trump and Biden, are making very important promises to their electorates, and if they whether they win the election, if Trump or Biden wins the election, they will have to honor those promises with their electorates, and I think that they will be very strong for Mexico and Mexico relations.
Excellent, Gustavo. We want to thank you for your participation in this special edition of Mexico Decides 2024. It's been a pleasure to have you in this important day.
Thank you very much.
So we were speaking with Gustavo López Montiel about this important election in Mexico that is happening right now. Actually, the polls closed at 6 p.m. local time, and also the Mexicans are expecting the results, of course, Let's see some images before we finish.
Como una disputa territorial.